Okay, good evening everybody. I am here. Stand by. Just trying to get everything going. On there. Hope you're all doing okay. Just trying to get some volume sorted out here. And then hopefully we'll be okay. So I might need your help tonight. I am here. I'm trying to get things working. I had a few technical issues trying to get even on, but I'm on. I'm just not sure what the volume's like. Hopefully it's not. Hopefully it's not too bad. Maybe someone can let me know. It's been a long day, but we're here. I was hoping to be on by 9, but here I am. I was out across in Ayrshire tonight this afternoon playing for Scottish Country Dancing, and then got home and we had a meeting with the lovely people down under in New Zealand, and then had time to quickly grab tea and set the Stagger Inn up. And just as the Stagger Inn's about to start, the boss has arrived. Come on up in your chair. Come up here. Come on. Up. Come on. You might get an appearance from him. Right, I'm going to try and play something just now, just to see if it's actually working, so you can maybe let me know. Working. There we go. Hopefully, okay. It's I don't know what's going on. I think it's probably saying you've not been on for ages. What are you doing? Nice to see you're all tuning in, and nice that Tiger's came and joined us as well. So I'm sure you'll all be probably more glad to see that Tiger's still here and keeping me on my toes and making sure that I'm playing tonight. So we'll see how we go. I have got a large dram poured after setting up because it took me a good wee while. So we'll see how we go. There's Grant McDrummer and everyone else. So good to see you on. I hope you're all looking after each other and keeping safe and well. And let's just play a couple of tunes while I get myself settled in. Getting there, nearly. And the YouTube lounge is open, just in case anyone's in. The headphones are because I can't play with speakers in the room because it will all interfere with the sound, the balance, everything like that. And it just makes a complete noise and feedback and everything like that. So I've got to play through headphones. And for some reason tonight it sounds very different through the headphones than what it normally does. No idea why. But as long as it's working online, I'm quite happy. As long as you're getting some music of some sort. Good to see that Amanda Pearson, and hope that your up all went well and that you're back on your feet and you'll be up soon dancing. Jacob Ingram says, was that a St. Bernard's Waltz? Yep, you can do any dance you like at the Stagger Inn because that's how it works. If there's a dance that you like, then you can just take your partner and do anything. Let's strip the willow, dash weight sergeant, anything you like. Right, we'll try a set of reels. Here we go. There we go. That's sounding a wee bit better now. Just see, takes a bit of time, and a wee dram makes everything better. Lovely to see you on, Sylvia. Hope you had a wonderful time at the theatre tonight. See anything nice? Well, it's good that you're all on. Thanks if you've shared the video by sharing it. In fact, you know what? I've not even shared it myself. So I'm going to do that right now. And then hopefully if anyone is out and about and would like to join us tonight, then they can. Hopefully I've pushed the right button myself. Share the video. Because I wasn't sure if I would be on tonight or not, so I thought rather than upset anyone and have to go in and then cancel at the last minute, I thought I'll just surprise you all. So here I am. Hope that you're all able to get the video that didn't share, so I'll try that again. Oh, there we go. Shared this post. Maybe not. Who else has tuned in? So we've got Fred tuned in. Fred asked me if I would give us a very special mention. Not this Sunday, but next Sunday we're having a St Andrew's Day dance in the Salutation Hotel in Perth. If you're interested to come along, you can get your tickets on the door. If you're passing the area, Fred says he has the Stagger Inn shop, which has loads of Christmas stuff on sale. See, I can't even share this tonight. My phone's going daft. Lots of Christmas stuff in stock, so he says come along, see him, and get your Christmas decorations from the Stagger Inn. Right, here we go. We'll play Mary's Wedding because there was a request for it there. So Shona says, I feel like I've already seen you tonight. Yes. Deja vu. Share now. That's it. Right, okay, there's a request for Mary's Wedding, so let's crack on and have a set for Mary's Wedding. Hopefully that's better. Just had a wee message coming in here saying, got a late pass to come out tonight and just finished watching you playing at 2013 at the Angus Grand Dance and you haven't changed a bit. Well, I don't know if Bill from the Gruesome Twosomes managed to tune into the Stagger Inn tonight or no, but if you're watching this, Bill, I'm going to take you to a wee trip. I'm going to take you to Specsavers. It was a wee while ago, 20 years, more than 20 years ago. Help yourself to drinks from the bar. Free bar as always tonight because we've not been on for so long. Betty's running about there with Helen serving drinks, and some people have got their cheese and biscuits out, which is great. And I'm not sure what else anyone else is eating. Right, I'm still getting there. Time will tell. Here's a wee two-step this time. Ali Floss two-step from the great Jim Hallcrow. Right, still getting there. Yes, always rely on the drummer there at the end. Good to see that Bill and Marie are tuned in there. He's just messaged me saying that he's tuned in. So Bill, when we catch up next, we'll take a wee trip to Specsavers, because you're saying you noticed how I've not really changed much in that video from 2023, but I was going to show you a wee photo here, which I found the other day. I was looking about tidying up some photos and looking at different things, and I found a photo of my very first Hogmanay gig on the box. There it is, with Alistair Ling and Jackie on the drums there, and that was in the at the time it was the Golden Stones Hotel in Dunbar, which has now got other names now. It's been changed a few times, but I thought I'd pop that on there, seeing as you were speaking about changes over many years. Good evening to Rosemary Melvin Payne, watching from St. John, New Brunswick in Canada, which is amazing. We have Susan and Shona both still here. I thought you would have had enough of seeing me the night and being away by now. Julie and John, and not forgetting Monty up in Shetland, Elizabeth Mann. Jacob still tuned there in the YouTube lounge. He's asking where everyone else is tuned in and watching. So a lot of people usually watch via the Facebook page. If you type in Ewan Galloway Music, that should take you to that, and you'll be able to see a few things there. Right, this time, let's have a quick step and see what comes out of the box. Okay, let me just get my tablet turned on with all my dots and music and bits and pieces. So I was running about that much trying to get the thing set up at the beginning of the night. I haven't even opened my music. Hello to Christine, listening in from Dingwall, all the way up there. You'll have loads of snow just now, probably. But it'll soon be Christmas time, no doubt. So It's just getting you ready for the festive season, I think that's what it's doing. We've got Trouble tuned in tonight. Joyce Wilson, Trouble. Stephen's there. Hi Stephen, hope you're doing well. Jacob's tuned in from Liverpool. Heather's asking for the Royal Scots Polka. I will play it once everything's loaded up, and there's a request by Irene. Good to see Irene on there in Shetland for Trip to Butte, and a few other tunes there as well. I've got a couple of other tunes I've been trying to learn as well over the past few months, so you're not getting some of the same stuff, and a wee mixture each time, so hopefully there'll be something for everyone tonight. We've not had let's have a wee set of jigs here. Push the right button. Good evening, Sigman49. That looks like Old Grumpy there, maybe. I'm not sure. Good grief, I didn't know you were on. You have not missed any 2-4s, you're safe. Don't worry. I've not managed to get any yet. I need to wait for wee Annie to make sure she's definitely here. Sorry, I don't know the tune Fiona's Wedding, I'm afraid, Jacob, but I'll try and find it for another time and hopefully be able to play it for you. Right, polka, the Royal Scots Polka. This was the first ever tune that I learned to play for a White Heather Foxtrot when I was with Davy Patrick. All the way from Wanganui, North Island, New Zealand. Great to see you on, Anne. Hope you're enjoying some warmer weather than we're having over here. Right, here's the Royal Scots Polka, especially for Heather. By the way, I gave you enough warning there to go and get your fiddle out, so I hope you're joining in. There we go. I thought I would test you there, Heather, and see if you would join in with the second tune, the Glenifer Polka by Andrew Rankin. Great tune. Hello, Mary, up there in Orkney. Lovely to see you on. Cheers. Good health. And Jamesy Boy's tuned in as well. Nice to see you on, Jamesy. Hope you're doing well. Right, set of 2/4 marches. 2/4 marches. There we go. That one there. See what tunes we come out with. There we go. That was John Carmichael's Farewell to Scotland, and then a pipe tune by John McCall, pipe major John McCall, called Arthur Bignold of Lochroisk, or Lochroisk, Arthur Bignold of Lochroisk. Good to see you tuned in, William. Hope that you're doing okay. Christine Matheson's tuned in there. 2/4's her favourite. It's a good job we Annies know about as well. Jacob, there's a whole thing here. We've got a drum machine over here, pedals here, 2 pedals at my feet, pedals for changing the iPad, pedals on the left, pedals for starting and stopping the thing, an iPad under doing other different things and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, That's as good as we're going to get for tonight, I think, on here. I'm going to try a modern waltz though, and hope that this might work. Just have to see. See how it goes. A wee tune there, lovely waltz called Anna's Visa. It's got words to it as well, I believe. And I noticed Sig had tuned in there saying that she's known this tune for a long time. So hopefully you had got your phenolic for that one and had a tune, if you knew it. No excuse. Right, this is especially for Bill Stephen. He's tuned in tonight. And this is the Lord Lovett's Lament, along with a few other things as well. just thinking, while I was playing that, for Sig there, she was saying she'd never heard me playing anything Swedish before. So, here's another one for you. This is called, I don't know how to pronounce it properly, but the Rook, or the Ruck Polka. Rucke. See how it goes. I'm going to snip over to the bar and see if Helen or Betty or anyone's serving a drink or not. That's quite interesting, Sig. Doing a skip change of step rather than the Scottish thing. So I shall look to see that one day at summer school. Well, so we've got Swedish Masquerade. Now there's an old one. Irene was saying there, when did we start the Stagger Inn? Well, we started the Stagger Inn, officially started playing music 1 week before lockdown. And that's where the people, everyone started tuning in, yourselves, you lovely listeners, and then every week it just seemed to get busier and busier and busier, and then here we are, nearly 6 years later, still playing music, still a community of people looking to meet when they can. The Stagger Inn weekend, coming up 5 years anniversary next Easter weekend, and sold out, and can't wait to see everyone for that. It's just such a great weekend and such a good atmosphere of everyone reuniting again. But yeah, so that was a Tam Do before, but the Tam Do has run out, so we're on the Muckle Flugga, which comes from Shetland. Lovely whiskey, and it's called Muckle Flugga Overwintered in Shetland, so I thought that would be quite apt for tonight. I'm trying to use the ones that are open. As Tiger says, come on Dad, stop leaving nearly half empty bottles. So I'll do my best, pal. I'll have as many as I can. Right, that'd be on the flare. Right, here's one for Irene Jameson up there in Shetland. Sorrento Fort, lovely waltz. Cheers, Sorrento Forts, and cheers, Irene. Very good question there from Old Grumpy. Old Grumpy says, Ewan, will you be doing a Hogmanay Stagger Inn this year? Well, let me tell you. So, this year I am doing something amazing. Been invited along with Susan and Shona McFadgen to go to New Zealand for some Scottish country dancing, and plan to go out to New Zealand on the 20th of December and don't get back for a while. So you can wonder who's on Tiger duty here, but he's got all his pals ready, loads of dreamies lined up, and he's quite happy that he's going to get looked after and spoilt. But I am aware that the past few years I've done a Hogmanay Stagger Inn show, and I feel the importance of doing one because the community that we have built up over the last 5 years. I understand a lot of people benefit from the Hogmanay show from home, and some people live on their own, isolated maybe in the middle of one or two places that they can't get out, and I know that the Stagger Inn brings that community to them in their own home. So I will be doing a Hogmanay show, but it'll be pre-recorded. So I'm holding my hands up now. I'll pre-record something. So I will sit, I'll decorate the whole studio as we always do, and we will make a show especially for Hogmanay in the hope that it'll all work and it'll all go well. So I can't guarantee, but I will do my best. We'll have it all set up to broadcast from 9 o'clock right through the bells, or it might be 9:30 to midnight, to allow the 3 hours. But hopefully it should work, and I'll get that recorded next week. And hopefully that will allow everyone to enjoy some sort of music that they all enjoy at Hogmanay. So there will be something online, but I'm holding my hands up and saying I'll be down under. However, speaking to the organisers of the event down under, the Scottish Country Dance summer school that we're doing, we're there for a week playing for Scottish Country Dancing, but we're speaking to Graham tonight, and we had a meeting with Shona and Susan and everyone, and they've named the party room at Christchurch, New Zealand, the Stagger Inn party room. So the plan is that hopefully we'll maybe do a wee live broadcast somehow. I don't know how it'll work, but we can just go on the mobile phone and broadcast live and play a couple of tunes. So it'll probably be about 9 o'clock in the morning or something when you see it. But I will do my best endeavours to make sure that there is some Stagger Inn Hogmanay show for the Stagger Inn community. Right. Request here from David for the March Past of the RAF, and Jacob's, I think, desperate here for the British Grenadiers, so we'll have that. We'll have the Hearts of Oak and everything else that goes with it. I'm getting conscious that it's nearly Marie's bedtime and I need to remember to play Calamine Lotion. It's one of Marie's favourite tunes, you see. She knows all the words to Calamine Lotion. She's been practicing them for ages. So if you're tuned in, Marie, don't worry, I've not forgotten you. We'll have Calamine Lotion and a couple of Gallic Waltzes very soon. Good to see William Nicol tuned in there. Hope you're doing well. Sorry, it's been a bit mad recently in December as well. December's off the scale as usual. Could I upload the RAF March Past as a single? Leave it with me. I'll see what I can do. See what I can come up with. I'd need to set all the studio up and get it recorded properly, but leave it with me. See what I can do. There's a message there from William asking if I could play some rousing Adam Rennie tunes, and I'm trying to think of the usual ones. There's a couple of tunes that are good Adam Rennie tunes. Miss Jean Kirkpatrick's Fancy springs to mind. I don't know why my mind's went completely blank, but what I'll do is, why don't I play a set of tunes of the same idiom, including one of Adam Rennie's tunes, for a set for Shifting Bobbins, and we'll see how we go. And we might even stick Done Asking Glenn on at the end, especially for George. Oh. Yeah, here's another one. Sig was asking if I play anything Finnish. And I was trying to think, do I know anything Finnish or not? And then one tune sprung into my mind. No idea if it's Finnish or not, but it was written in 1915 by Karol Arbo. And it's a wee waltz called Life in the Finland Woods. So I'm guessing it must be something related to it. There we go, something different. Life in the Finland Woods. Trouble's asking for anything Irish. Well, there is Irish stuff here, but I'm not quite sure if I get the right tunes or not. But I'll play something for you. Not that one, no. Seeing you're spending home, any chance you play the Maori Farewell? Ah, now there's something I'll probably need to learn. The Maori Farewell song. So I'm glad that you've commented. I'm trying to see in the picture. That looks like Cecil in the wee picture, maybe with lots of radios. GMO0KM. Maybe a code name for the radio. I'll certainly look in. In fact, have I got... I've got the Maori Girl's Dream, but I think that's different to what you're probably saying. Anyway, while I think about it, here is a set of Irish reels for Trouble, hopefully. Right, well, Marie, I hope you're still tuned in. And if you are tuned in, then this next one is especially for you. And I expect you to sing really loudly, tell all the neighbours that you're singing, and enjoy singing the next tune, which is Calamine Lotion. It's good for the skin. Lovely message just there from the other half of the gruesome twosome, Marie, saying that she was singing away, as Gordon Young would say, like a linty. And lovely loud the words. In fact, I think the police have just arrived at our front door now. Well, we're getting there. Hope you're all enjoying having some music. It's been a wee while since we've been on, but nice to get back on and see everyone and say hello and have a tune or two, or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10. I'm getting fed up wearing these headphones and pushing buttons and stuff, so what I'm going to do, because it's 11 o'clock, I'm going to take these off. And if I turn that up there, I'm going to play a couple of tunes without any headphones on for a wee while. What we'll do is we'll just do some sort of medley thing, just keep playing lots of tunes, and I'll have a drink in between I play. So used to always be good to have a bit of fun at the Stagger Inn, and used to shout out some sort of letter and would work our way through. Instead of shouting letters, we'll just go through your favourite tunes and play as many as we can, and see where we end up. And when we get to a bass solo, I'll have a drink of whiskey, and that should all work nicely. Oh, it's warm in here. Grant, you're saying blast my neighbours out. I've got no neighbours at all just now. Next door's been empty for a good while, so I don't know what's happened to the house. But thanks very much, Robert. I need to catch up with you at some point, because the new CD that's just out, or it's on pre-order just now. There's a new CD on pre-order. It's Scottish country dance music, but loads of great tunes that you'll all know. And it's a CD that's been asked for a long time. It's 2 couple dances that are done 6 times through, rather than 8 times through. And there's been a lot of people asking for it, so there's 16 dances on it, loads of good stuff that most people should know. And they're on pre-order, and the reason they're on pre-order is to try and I'm just laughing at Sig's comment. Is to try and help. I can't remember what I was saying now, because that probably they got so sick of being your neighbours that they've moved out of all the racket and noise. Probably right. Anyway, there's a good CD. The pre-orders are there to help me work out how many roughly I'm getting. So if you'd like one, they're on the website there. Go on and put your order in if you want. They're available in USB on their own, CD on their own, or CD and USB, so you can have a choice of it. But the reason I'm saying to yourself, Robert, is because I've recorded the McMaths of Silverburn on one of the tracks, so I'll make sure that we catch up with you. Right, here is a couple of tunes. I wonder if I could wear one ear on. That might be better. Right, see where we go. Try that. Right, there we go. Thank you very much, everyone. I know you want the trows, but I'm not sure. I'm only singing the trows if you sing it with me. But thanks very much. That was 1 hour of full playing of absolutely anything and everything. So good memories of the Stagger Inn and lockdown times, and that's what it's about. It's good fun. And a good community through all. So thanks for tuning in. I'm going to finish off for tonight, and I'm going to go and have a dram with Tiger. But before we do, we'll put We'll put the words for the Trowie song up. Oh, pushed the wrong button. Not that one. They're actually up here from last time. There you go. Right. If you've never sang this in your life, then you need to at least give it a shot. These are, if you've not listened to this song before, this is a great traditional sort of Shetland song. And a trow is like a wee beastie. I was about to say a trow is a wee beastie that lurks in your belly after a feastie. 2 seconds. You can tell that I really wasn't planning to sing this tonight, because I'm not prepared. Does anyone get any muscles left? Oh my goodness me. So it's been a traditional thing from the Stagger Inn for ages. It's something that I always wanted to sing during lockdown, and sang it in Shetland. And when I sang it in Shetland, the speaker blew. So I'm not blaming my singing. I'm blaming the trowie. But it'd be nice to go through it quickly. So take a peerie lock across the hills means you take a small walk across the hills. And Shetlanders, you can help me out if I'm slightly wrong here. There runs a trowie burn, there runs a wee burn, a wee river. And folk that wander there at night means the folk that wander at night see the trows at every turn. Means that they see the wee trows, the wee pesty beasties at every turn. With their peerie wands and their sheeny hands, their peerie wand and their shiny hands, and clays upon their taes, that's the claws upon their toes. And if do meet a neighbour man, if you meet a neighbour man, he'll turn to thee and say, he'll turn to you and say. So, just for a bit of laugh to finish off, thanks so much everyone for all your support as always. As promised, I know I'm away New Zealand for Hogmanay, but the past few years, the Hogmanay show, it's been a lifeline to me, and hopefully I think a lifeline to everyone else that tunes in as well. So I will do my very best to make sure there's a video so that you can all still come on here and join in. I hope you survived, Robert. So, here you go. Take a peerie lock across the hills, runs a trowie burn, and the folk that wander there at night say the trowies at every turn. With the peerie wands and the sheeny hands and the clays upon their taes. And if thou meets a neighbour man, he'll turn to thee and say, I've been a warrow on a trow today, I've been a warrow on a trows. They're the wildest best to her seen, and the gluffney with a blooderedine, and the worst of them is all is the peerie heftin' with just the one claw. He'll clue ye to voo ye clays, and you've been a warrow on a trow. height of the night, they light the beery lights and they dance out trow-ee-ree-oom. They twist and they turn and they brew up and they burn and they sing their songs as we oom. And they set and Scots and the folk they cash gluft and shift them all the roads. They gig on the gun when sea got and turn and they had amongst the clouds. A been a warrow on the trout and they been a warrow on the trout. They're the wildest best to her a seen and the glufty with a blood reading and the worst of them is all. Is the pity hefting with just the one claw, he'll clue ye to boo ye glaze and I been a warrow on the trout, been a warrow on the trout. Thanks very much everyone, look after yourselves, take care of each other, Christmas is coming. Yodel. Come on, all together. Thanks very much everyone and good night. God bless you all. By the way, someone said once, is the cat real? Yeah, he's real, aren't you? Hello? Hello? Just you know, the sound of the accordion obviously is that soothing that it helps him relax and sleep. I'm sure it'll do the same to you all. Right. Good night everyone. I'm going to get my PJs on. Oh. See, the cat's real. See, have you enjoyed the show tonight? Are you sure you enjoyed the show? Yeah. Do you want some dreamies?